All right, hey there, students. Mr. Carlson here. Just kind of a little bit of review of the prologue and what we read about on Tuesday. A couple things to point out here about a pentameter, about how this rhymes, about how a sonnet contains 14 lines. And as you can see, it goes A, B, A, B, and then C, D, C, D, and then E, F, E, F, and then it ends with a G, G. And that's a couplet at the end where the two lines rhyme together. And you can see in the sonnet that there's 14 lines. There's a beat that keeps going along the entire time. This is an example of this one. So if we look at ours from the prologue, and we look at this, we can see, two households, both alike in dignity. In fair Verona, where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. So A rhymes with A, B and B, and then C, C, D, D, and so on and so forth. And at the end, you have a rhyme where you have the last two lines rhyme together, and you have your couplet that goes there. And just to process the writing of this, the amazing work of Shakespeare. Um, just like I said yesterday, you can really appreciate that, regardless of whether you're going to appreciate the play or not. We can appreciate the time. And the thing about Shakespeare is that we learned that these plays were written very quickly, and for him to have such great work is pretty amazing. So there you have it. Let's just kind of reread our notes here on what takes place in the prologue, so we remind ourselves. In the beautiful city of Verona, where our story takes place, a long-standing hatred between two old families erupt into new violence, and citizens stain the hands of the blood of their fellow citizens. Two unlucky children of these enemy families, Romeo and Juliet, become lovers and commit suicide. So they fall in love with the one person, the one family that they've had a big grudge against forever. Their unfortunate deaths put an end to their parents' feud. For the next 2 hours, we'll watch the story of their doomed love and their parents' anger, which nothing but children's death could stop. If you listen to us patiently, we'll make up for everything we've left out in this prologue on stage. So here we go. So I'll try and keep spark notes up with it. Chances are I'm probably not going to be very successful. It goes pretty quick, but it starts right away. And we have two Capulets. We have Samson and Gregory. So if they're a Capulet, they're Juliet's. They're hey, So here we have Samson and Gregory, two people of Juliet's house, the Capulet, and we're going to begin.
Gregory, my word, will not carry coals.
No, for then we should be colliers.
I mean, and we being collar will draw.
Aye, while you live, draw your neck out of the collar.
I strike quickly, being moved.
But thou art not quickly moved to strike.
A dog of the house of Montague moved me.
To move is to stir, and to be valiant is to stand. Therefore, if thou art moved, thou runst away.
A dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague.
That shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall.
True, and therefore women, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore I will push Montague's men from the wall and thrust his maids to the wall.
The quarrel is between our masters and us, their men.
'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be cruel with the maids. I will cut off their heads.
The heads of the maids.
Aye, the heads of the maids. Or their maiden heads. Take it in what sense thou wilt.
They must take it in sense that feeling.
Me they shall feel while I am able to stand. And 'tis known I am a pretty piece of flesh.
'Tis well thou art not fish. If thou hadst been poor John.
All right, so it starts here. There's obviously some pretty dirty jokes as we get going here on page 736. But one thing you can pick off is that Gregory and Samson are Capulet servants. They work for the Capulets, and they have a grudge towards the Montagues because, well, it's just how it is. A stupid grudge has been going on from generation to generation, and since they work for the Capulets, they're not a Capulet, but since they work for the Capulets, they have hatred towards the Montagues. And here we have two other servant men, Abram and Balthazar, and these two men are people these are servants that work for the Montagues.
Draw thy tool. Here comes two of the House of Montagues.
My naked weapon is out. Quarrel, I will back thee.
How? Turn thy back and run.
Fear me not.
No, marry, I fear thee.
Let us take the law of our sides. Let them begin.
I will frown as I pass by, and let them take it as they list.
Nay, as they dare. I will bite my thumb at them, which is a disgrace to them if they bear it.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
I do bite my thumb, sir.
Do you bite your thumb at us, sir?
Is the law of our side if I say aye?
No.
No, sir, I do not bite my thumb at you, sir. But I bite my thumb, sir.
Do you quarrel, sir?
Quarrel, sir? No.
All right, so here we have the Capulets biting their thumb, a sign of disrespect toward the Montagues. And so we have Gregory and Samson, who are kind of getting into it with Balthasar and Abram. And Gregory, the Capulet, says, "Are you trying to start a fight?" And Abram says, "No, I am not." And so continuing on here, Samson and Abram kind of keep going, and it leads to a pretty stupid fight.
Sir.
But if you do, sir, I am for you. I serve as good a man as you.
No better?
Well, sir.
Say better. Here comes one of my master's kinsmen.
Yes, better, sir.
You lie.
Draw, if you be men. Gregory, remember thy swatching blow.
I mean, I don't know. That sounds like a pretty amazing fight there between the Montague servants and the Capulet servants. But here we have Benvolio enters, and if you look in your notes there on page 734, Benvolio is the nephew of Montague and a friend of Romeo. So he's pretty close to Romeo, and he's kind of the peacemaker here, and he's telling them to stop.
For swords, you know not what you do.
So now we have the next character enter. This is Tybalt. Tybalt is a Capulet. He is Juliet's cousin. And so Benvolio is a nephew of the Montagues. It's Romeo's good friend. And now Tybalt enters, and he is he's Juliet's cousin.
On among these heartless hinds. Turn thee, Benvolio. Look upon thy death. I do but keep the peace. Put up thy sword, or manage it to part these men with me. Drawn and talk of peace. I hate the word, as I hate hell. All Montagues, and thee, have at thee, coward. Beat them down. Down with the Capulets. Down with the Montagues.
My longsword home.
All right, so this battle's gotten pretty intense. We have Tybalt and Benvolio going at it. The citizens start fighting each other. Mr. Capulet enters. Mrs. Capulet enters. Mr. Montague enters. Mrs. Montague enters. And it's just a huge argument over, well, someone biting their thumb. You know, it's because this stupid grudge has started long ago. And we can all relate to this. You know, we've probably argued with maybe a mom or a dad or a grandparent, most likely a sister or a brother over something pretty stupid, like who gets to sit in the front seat, and so on and so forth. And so here we have an example of that. When in the grand scheme of things, when you think about it, you're like, man, this is just pathetic. But here it is. You know, this would be a great time if you want to take a break. You know, over here, got a pretty nice looking sub there, a choice sub that looks pretty tasty from Firehouse. Ooh, I really like their Chipotle chicken one. That's my best. You got a nice fleece. Still looking at that nice sweater. Ooh, and a fuchsia 2 times Isaac something. Yeah, I don't know. But take a look at that if you need to. We're going to continue on.
My sword, I say. Montague, and flourish. In spite of me. Thou villain, Capulet. Hold me not. Let me go.
I'll not stir 1 foot to seek the
I found your subjects. Enemies to peace.
All right, so here we have this fight now has started with the servants. It becomes a cousin Tybalt, you know, the nephew Montague. Mr. and Mrs. Capulet arrive. Mr. and Mrs. Montague arrive, and they're all fighting. And now the prince, kind of like the leader of the city, shows up, and he pretty much puts him on the spot here, and this is what he says.
Profaners of this labor-stained steel. Are they not here? What? No! Your man is beasts that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground.
So here you have the prince, and he pretty much tells him, hey, if you don't listen to me right now and stop fighting, I'm going to have you tortured. And so Mr. Montague and Mr. Capulet and everyone else throw down their weapons, and they listen to what the prince has to say. And this is what he has to say here.
And hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls, bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans in hands as old, cankered with peace, to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. For this time, all the rest depart away. You, Capulet, shall go along with me. And Montague, come you this afternoon to know our father pleasure in this case. To old Freetown, our common judgment place, once more, on pain of death, all men depart.
So a pretty strong comment here by the prince to tell them to stop fighting with each other. If there's another battle, he tells Mr. Capulet and Mr. Montague that they're going to die with their lives. He tells Mr. Capulet to come with him right now. This is Juliet's dad. And he tells Mr. Montague to come visit him this afternoon, and that is Romeo's father. You know, obviously the play started, and our 2 main characters, Romeo and Juliet, aren't in here yet. And sometimes you wonder when you see a battle, like, where is Romeo? So everyone leaves except for Mr. Montague, Mrs. Montague, and Benvolio. And remember, Benvolio is the nephew of the Montagues. He's Romeo's best friend. And so here we go.
Who set this ancient quarrel new approach? Speak, nephew. Were you by when it began? Here were the servants of your adversary, and yours close fighting ere I did approach. I drew to part them. In the instant came the fiery Tybalt with his sword prepared, which, as he breathed defiance to my ears, he swung about his head and cut the winds, who, nothing hurt withal, hissed him in scorn. While we were interchanging thrusts and blows, came more, and fought on part and part, till the prince came, who parted either part.
Oh, where is Romeo? Saw you him today? Right glad I am he was not at this fray.
Madam, an hour before the worshipped sun peered forth the golden window of the east, a troubled mind drave me to walk abroad, where, underneath the grove of sycamore, that westward rooteth from the city's side, so early walking did I see your son. Toward to my maid, but he was ware of me, and stole into the covert of the wood, I measuring his affections by my own, that most are busied when they're most alone. Pursued my humor, not pursuing his, and gladly shunned, who gladly fled from me.
All right, so if you look here with Benvolio, he talks about, they asked where Romeo is, and he states that he sees his friend here crying under a tree. He went over to try and talk to him, and he realized that Romeo was avoiding him. So Mr. Montague continues on here.
Many a morning hath he there been seen, with tears augmenting the fresh morning's dew, adding to clouds more clouds with his deep sighs, but all so soon as the all-cheering sun should in the farthest east begin to draw the shady curtains from Aurora's bed. Away from light steals home my heavy son, and private in his chamber pens himself, shuts up his windows, locks fair daylight out, and makes himself an artificial night. Black and portentous must this humor prove, unless good counsel may the cause remove.
All right, so we find out that Romeo is trying to avoid everyone. During the day, he shuts all the curtains. He's just super sad, and Benvolio now asks his uncle, who says, do you know why?
Uncle, do you know the cause?
I neither know it nor can learn of him.
Have you importuned him by any means?
Both by myself and many other friends. But he, his own affections' counselor, is to himself, I will not say how true, but to himself so secret and so close, so far from sounding and discovery, as is the bud bit with an envious worm, ere he can spread his sweet leaves to the air or dedicate his beauty to the sun. Could we but learn from whence his sorrows grow, We would as willingly give cure as no.
See where he comes, so please you step aside. I'll know his grievance or be much denied.
I will.
All right, so they see Romeo coming here, and Benvolio says, hey, Uncle, why don't you head out? Let me see if I can figure out what's going on with Romeo. So Mr. Montague and Mrs. Montague leave, and Benvolio's trying to figure out what's going on with his friend Romeo.
Would thou wert so happy by thy stay to hear true shrift. Come, madam, let's away.
Good morrow, cousin.
Is the day so young?
But news struck 9.
Ay me, sad hours seem long. Was that my father that went hence so fast?
It was. What sadness lengthens Romeo's hours?
Not having that which having makes them short.
In love.
Out.
Of love.
Out of her favor where I am in love.
All right, so we find out that Romeo loves someone, but she doesn't love him back. And it's very frustrating for him at this time.
Alas, that love so gentle in his view should be so tyrannous and rough in proof.
Alas, that love whose view is muffled still should without eyes see pathways to his will. Where shall we dine? Oh me, what fray was here? Yet tell me not, for I have heard it all. Here's much to do with hate, but more with love. Why then, O brawling love, O loving hate, O anything of nothing first create, O heavy likeness, serious vanity, misshapen chaos of well-seeming forms, feather of lead, bright smoke, cold fire, sick health, still waking sleep, that is not what it is. This love feel I that feel no love in this. Dost thou not laugh?
No, cuz, I rather weep.
Good heart at what?
At thy good heart's oppression.
Why such is love's transgression? Griefs of mine own lie heavy in my breast, which thou wilt propagate to have it pressed with more of thine. This love that thou hast shown doth add more grief to too much of mine own. Love is a smoke raised with the fume of sighs, being purged a fire sparkling in lovers' eyes, being vexed a sea nourished with lovers' tears. What is it else? A madness most discreet, a choking gall, and a preserving sweet. Farewell, my cuz.
Soft, I will go along. And if you leave me so, you do me wrong.
Tut! I have lost myself. I am not here. This is not Romeo. He is some otherwhere.
Tell me in sadness who is that you love.
What, shall I groan and tell thee?
Groan? Why, no. But sadly, tell me who.
Did a sick man in sadness make his will? Ah, word ill urged to one that is so ill. In sadness, cousin, I do love a woman.
I aimed so near when I supposed you loved.
A right good mark, man. And she's fair, I love.
A right fair mark, fair cuz, as soonest hit.
Well, in that hit you miss. She'll not be hit with Cupid's arrow. She hath Dian's wit, and in strong proof of chastity well armed. From love's weak childish bow she lives unharmed. She will not stay the siege of loving terms, nor bide the encounter of assailing eyes, nor ope her lap to saint-seducing gold. Oh, she's rich in beauty, only poor that when she dies with beauty dies her store.
Then she hath sworn that she will still have chaste.
She hath, and in that sparing make huge waste. For beauty starved with her severity cuts beauty off from all posterity. She is too fair, too wise, wisely too fair to merit bliss by making me despair. She hath forsworn to love, and in that vow do I live dead that live to tell it now.
Be ruled by me. Forget to think of her.
Oh, teach me how I should forget to think.
By giving liberty unto thine eyes, examine other beauties.
'Tis the way to call hers exquisite in question more. These happy masks that kiss fair ladies' brows, being black, puts us in mind they hide the fair. He that is struck and blind cannot forget the precious treasure of his eyesight lost. Show me a mistress that is passing fair, what doth her beauty serve but as a note, where I may read who passed that passing fair. Farewell, thou canst not teach me to forget.
I'll pay that doctrine, or else die in debt.
All right, so a couple things we find out here. We find out that Romeo's in love with a woman, but she doesn't love him back, and he's really struggling with going on with his life here because he feels that it's really problematic. And I think of this. I remember my crush in third grade. Her name, I won't tell your name, but on my Valentine card that she wrote to all third graders, she spelled my name as Luck, Luck, and I was so devastated. I couldn't imagine the world without this nice young woman, and obviously that's all I thought about that time. I was pretty irrational, and as you can see, I persevered through my hardship, and here I am now. So I think it's just something to be considerate of and to think about, and just know that Roman's really struggling. He's acting pretty irrational because he's in love with a woman who wants to remain chaste, and he's really struggling with continuing on with his life because of that.